Welcome back to the Scale Forward podcast. Today, I'm joined by Will from Vyro. Vyro started as an online EV retailer, but quickly evolved into supplying digital storefronts for OEMs and car dealers across Australia, NZ, which is New Zealand, Ireland, and Switzerland. Will, great to have you on the show today, mate. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here, Russell.
Yes, we were chatting before the show, as I do with everybody, and you've got a really interesting story about where it almost went, as we say in Australia, tits up. So I look forward to getting to that later. But before we do, can you just give us a brief introduction to what your role is over at Vyro and how you got started and how this whole thing came about?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Will. I'm the founder and CEO of Vyro. This whole thing started with a phone call. I was running an online EV retailer, and this absolute legend of a guy, his name's Bruce. He's the general manager for Polestar in New Zealand. All right. And Bruce calls me up and he goes, Will, I don't know what to tell you. Out of this big car making machine, the head office is telling me that they need a year to be able to add a new year model to my car, to my online website. Bruce is, and if you don't know, a new year model comes out every single year. Bruce is in a bad spot. He goes, well, I've seen your platform and I can see what it can do. Could I buy that off you? Could I license it? No. Yeah. So we're just thinking, right, this is a whole new business. And we said yes, like every good startup should. And 3 weeks later, we did it. Last month, highest selling EV brand in all of New Zealand. He went from 1 dealership to 6 dealerships. He's outselling the Teslas and the BYDs. He's nailing it. Great. Been a great run. That became our whole thing. We turned that into our business and completely wound up everything else and focused entirely on our software journey.
Well, that's a pretty ballsy call, because you were telling me that you yourself and the platform were outselling these major manufacturers.
Yeah.
You just mentioned a couple, Polestar, BYD, etc. Then Bruce gives you the call and bold of Bruce as well. It's like, hey, let me get that real quick.
Give me a piece of that.
For obvious reasons, they probably had their data. But how did that happen? Hey, you're already selling more than this, so I'm sure you'll make a decent coin. I guess the question is, how did you identify that? Yeah, that's probably the better path to go down. What comes to my mind is like, sell the shovels, not hunt for the gold type sort of thing. But yeah, what made you so confident that this was the right thing to do?
Yeah, Russell, it was so evidently clear that we're heading down a path where we had this opportunity. We could go off and be a retailer and fulfill a mission, or we could be the operating system for an entire industry. That was the inflection point, was that. But if I wanted to bring it back to it, I'd love to say that decision making was really, really easy. In hindsight, I knew the answer, but I actually wanted to try and run both horses. I wanted to run the EV retailer and also race ahead with this software thing. And I did. I actually split the business into 2, created one side, which was called Vyro Labs, and the other side, which was Vyro Retail. And we kept growing. And the 2 were really, they had a lot of synergies, because we would kind of land these deals here in Australia on our retail business that would open up doors. So we started selling tons of Polestars. And the reason why Bruce got my phone call, my number, and made that phone call was because the guys here in Australia were going, this guy sells more cars than we do. And how do we get on that? Like anything, and I guess this is pretty evident for anyone in a startup space, is that you go through these highs and lows. About mid 2024, we had this awesome deal lined up, and it was going to make us. It was all looking good. It was the kind of deal with size of a business that you had to scale before you started the deal. Before we'd signed it, I was losing about $250,000 every month, just purely because the amount of staff that I'd taken on to win the deal. And that company had a bad quarter, had some bad press, whole thing fell apart. We went from, I had to let go 98% of my staff. It was me and one other guy left. I had to let go of pretty much all of our revenue generating except for the absolute core. Shut down the entire retail business. Honestly, I was probably insolvent. Would have lost my house. A month later, we turned the whole thing around. Shifted our focus entirely onto software, locked in just what we knew we did well. Did that, turned about $500,000 in profit the month after. That's profit, not revenue. That's That's cash
Crazy.
after. Yeah. And it just made a ton of sense. I mean, if you want to really, I think a lot of people will tell you that during your startup journey, you should trust your gut. That was an opportunity where I got lucky and I didn't trust my gut, or I didn't follow it with 100% conviction. If I'd done that sooner, I would have got there faster and we probably would have burnt less cash. But in that particular instance, I deferred that decision and I got lucky because so many other people, slightly different parameters that would end up.
Wow. Okay. So you're trying to do two things, right? And it goes literally the worst way it could possibly go right after. So you're at the very high. You're like, we're going to land this big thing. We've got to scale up for it to deliver it, and then shit hits the fan. And now are you burning your own cash? Because you didn't get any investors or anything, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
I was going through
okay.
my own cash. I was going through the business cash. At the time we had cars, which we had held as stock back when we were a retailer. We were selling off cars to pay salaries.
Damn. It's crazy. Yeah. All right. It's
crazy. Going through that cycle where you've got to let go of so many people all of a sudden, and so many of them were great and would even stay on to support the business during that, which is an amazing thing for anyone to do. But you naturally lose bits of IP, bits of your operations. I mean, you go through that process. The guy who looked after the finance was no longer in the business. It's a really rough place.
It's a massive turnaround. What sort of skills do you think, or previous skills, like what's your background to enable you to deliver this software so quickly, to then go to the turnaround, to bring that in? Yeah, kind of like continually break that down for us if you can. I think there's a lot of lessons we can all learn from that.
My background, I guess if I go back to when I was 10, all right, I was 10 years old and I always had this entrepreneurial mindset. I would go to my sister's soccer game. I'd run the canteen. When I was 12, I picked up a job washing dishes at my mate's mum's restaurant. I'd get paid in soft drinks and I'd take them to school and I'd flip them for cash.
No, there's no way.
That is a really
I was selling soft drink. I was selling cans of Coke in the backpack in high school as well. That's so crazy. It's the best.
Solid business idea. Yeah, exactly. Supply and demand. So I guess that was always a thing. But I fell into being a software engineer. I started working for this company and my boss was like, I want to go online. We're losing business. I said, I'll figure it out. Let's give this a crack. And he was an online training course provider. Well, he became an online training course provider. So I built him a website. It was terrible. Some buttons clicked around, but it worked. And I think it's still used today, actually, which is, I think, pretty impressive. And that became my thing. I started building websites. I ended up senior engineering roles with the likes of SiteMinder, IPO'd about, I think, 2021 for 1.5 billion. Here in Australia, Commonwealth Bank, I was the principal engineer for their X15 Ventures arm, and a bunch of others as well. I got to do this as a high school dropout, finished school when I was 16. Never studied anything in relation to engineering, never went to university. And to be honest, if I think back on it, almost every form of formal education was, I'm hesitant to say a complete waste of time, but it wasn't far from it because it just wasn't.
Don't say it.
For me, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I got lucky though. And there's a couple of things out of that. I learned from the people around me. I think that's really important. You need to identify good people that you can hone in on and learn from them. Get them to teach you, get them to enjoy teaching you. It is very rare to find someone who doesn't like to share some knowledge with someone. And if they don't like doing it, they're probably not worthwhile talking to anyway. And I have a willingness to always just say yes. If I think back to when Bruce said, could I buy your platform? There are so many things in so many books about how to run a startup that would tell you that that's a bad idea because you're distracting yourself from your core. And that's the wrong thing to do. And that we said yes. And I got that opportunity and did something awesome with it and would never look back.
Yeah. I think you make a good point. People who are often more successful than others, and let's say they've got the money, they've got the success. One of the things that I've found that they all love doing is just helping others. That's like the next thing, because more money is not going to make them happy or fulfilled. And so I think you're right. If and they're saying product are the 5 people you spend the most time with. So yeah, find really good people is what your message was, and ask questions and try and learn from them, and you'll find that people are ahead of you are more than
100%.
willing to help out. So you get Bruce on board and you build and you ship for Bruce in 3 weeks, and fast forward to now, Bruce is killing the game. I'm sure a lot of other stuff happened in there in terms of growth. Bruce is not your only client.
Yeah.
You've grown to multiple countries since then. I kind of listed them at the top of the show. Can you walk me through how that all ended up happening?
Yeah, for sure. We never spent $1 on marketing other than whatever the
Still
small
to
amount.
this day?
Yeah, 100%.
That's crazy. Wow.
And how that all worked was that we really took a deep look at who's who in the zoo here. Now, Bruce, he's GM of a single brand. Single brand in most countries has a dealer group or an importer above it. Okay, there's some kind of a parent company there. Underneath them, there's a handful of other companies, other brands. Now, when you do really good relationship building, I know Bruce, I know everything about him. I know his whole family. I love this guy. Like, he's an absolute legend. And I probably call him 2-3 times a week. And from that, we were able to champion him within his business. That elevated him up. Everyone else in his business wanted to then know who we were and want to work with us. That gave us an opportunity and a right to be able to work with 20 other brands in New Zealand. And then we just looked for similar markets. Ireland has more or less very similar population, fairly similar country in a lot of ways. Speaks the same language, even drives on the same side of the road. So we just jumped in there and went nuts, found a similar company, got an introduction to them through the networks that we'd been building in these other countries, and I kept scaling. Sure enough, the doors start opening themselves, and one door leads to another, and they open faster and faster.
What's a couple of pieces of advice that you would give to someone to intentionally go and do that? So, because the nature of the game, especially today, is just as fast as it scale at all costs, fast. So you landed Bruce, you championed Bruce. What are some of the things you intentionally did to get to that point where the doors would open?
It's a really good question. I think there's a couple of things here. It's not just one relationship you've got to build. You've got to build these different facets all around you. And you need to be very strategic about how you do this. Be very intentional. And the person that you're dealing with, you're trying to sell to Bruce, for example. Where's Bruce at now? Okay, he's got a problem. He asks headquarters to do something and they just aren't taking a bar of it. All right, that's where Bruce is at. Where does Bruce need to be? Well, he wants it online, but he also wants to sell a shit ton of cars. How do we get him to that? All right, now figure out what's going on around Bruce. Who's Bruce's counterpart? Who's the guy that he's trying to beat or outdo? And who's the guy who's a pain in the organization, who's bearing him down? Understand all of those facets, because at the core of it, you need to find a way to be able to make that person a success. Then, and this is all happening just on one scale, but do that. And as a founder, do that and do every single part of it the whole way through. Understand it really intimately, because you can do this with every role in your whole business. You're going to find how that role really works. Then hire someone. Hire 2 people, hire 3 people, whatever it may be. Do that knowing how that role works. Don't hire first and then figure it out later. It's terrible. You will make so many mistakes. I have seen so many founders do this really successfully, where you dive in from the get-go, do that role yourself, then hire it and scale it and grow it. It's either that or get really good advice or find some other way to do it. But don't just hire it on what you think they need. You're almost definitely wrong.
Let's talk about the marketing. That's you haven't spent a ton of money on marketing. Word of mouth is still really kicking goals for you guys. You nailed product market fit. Where you'd go from here? Are you looking to spend money in marketing? I mean, AI is clearly here, and so it's not that expensive to market using AI tools now. Yeah. So has this opened up any new doors for you to explore?
Yeah, this brings me to where I'm at the moment. We still spend a ton of time and a ton of money every time we take on a new client. That's largely because in practice, we go off and we set up things, we onboard them, and that takes time. I want that whole process to be entirely self-serviceable. I really want this to get down to the point where, as much as I love Bruce, I would love it to be in a position where he could come onto our platform and sign up the entire way through himself. All right, nothing of us. It opens up this huge ballpark of clientele that are happy to have that. They're happy to have maybe a bit more of a templated approach. And it gives us exposure to the upper end of town, working directly with the top end clients that we want with major multi-million-dollar deals. Because they can go off and they can have their marketing person or their customer experience person go and set up a demo, try it out. So for us to lock it in, there's a ton of things that I want to do around that. And the next step in our journey is to make that onboarding journey completely self-serviceable and really, really, really clean. I think that's so important.
Yes. Self-service of onboarding. But again, Will, that's not your traditional marketing. That's not the SaaS playbook, kinda. Where's your blog content? Where's your LinkedIn posts? Where's your YouTubes and all that sort of stuff? Are you just this insanely unique business that doesn't need that? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just not on your mind. You don't think that's the biggest lever to pull right now?
Yeah, for sure. You got to pull it when the time is right. When we ran our retail business, we did spend money on marketing there. We wasted tons of marketing because we would use it as almost too much as an experimental tool. And we would go off and try these different messages, but leave parts of our journey off. Eventually, that was fine. We'd learn things, we'd figure out. In some ways, we used that in a really good way. We would throw people through a funnel, see where they landed, find where the drop off was, and then just keep plugging the whole way through. Eventually, someone got to the whole way to the end. I'm still a long way off from needing to do that. And I really mean this. The automotive industry is quite unique in a way that word of mouth and relationships are incredibly important. One of my first, if I go back to that very first employer that I mentioned, all right, the guy who built the online course for, he had a really interesting business where he would set up shops in every little town all over Australia, all right? And his whole business model predicated on the power of being local. It was all around, and he had nothing local there, right? His business was over in Melbourne in the middle of the city. But he would set up these little tiny shops and he would market to everyone there that this is the local place where you can go off and you can get some training course done. And it sold crazy well for a really long time. Eventually he tapped out. Automotive has its own unique case where building a relationship with someone, understanding them, building that trust is paramount to that deal going ahead. There is very, very limited opportunity to sell something in this market without having that relationship. And it's also an awesome weapon to be able to utilize because you can build those relationships, learn so much about your customers, build a product entirely around their needs and grow from there. So I guess if I was to come back to your question, there's a time and a place for the SaaS playbook that you're mentioning. I'm sure that there will be. There are some stones we need to turn over before we get there. But that's not to suggest that we don't scale like crazy in between here and there. There's other methodologies that we are continuing to employ and they work really, really well.
What are they?
Yeah. Building those relationships, finding people, building that network. Word of mouth is the 3 words to sum it up.
Yeah, fair enough.
100%.
Okay, so fair enough. It's a fair enough answer. I'll give it to you. It's, because, something else where outside of the automotive industry, I'd be tempted to push back a bit and say, no, like at least test it, Will,
Yeah.
But you probably have in the other side of the business and can confidently sit there and tell me to go away, pretty much. Like, you know what you're talking about, obviously.
I'll be happy to be proven wrong. So
Yeah,
definitely not something that I'd say that I'm hard on. I think that's an important thing about if I learned anything that I could pass on is through the past 4 years of this journey. You'll make plenty of mistakes. Everyone knows that. Everyone says that. But you also get a few of those mistakes where you get to go back and redo it. And you get to take a second stab at the route that you went down. I think it was Jeff Bezos had a saying along the lines of that you get these decisions that are one-way doors or two-way doors. I think it was Jeff. Don't quote me exactly. And a one-way door is a scenario where you're not going to come back from this. If you go down that path, it's going to be too expensive, too timely, too costly. You're never going to come back. You should sleep on those decisions and you should really think about them. And two-way doors, you can go down, you can come back. It's all good. It's okay. It's probably going to be fine. This is something that is absolutely something we can test out and try. And it's definitely a two-way door.
Yes, 100%. Let's talk about Vyro's team. Where you're at now in terms of scale, in terms of team members, if you call them that,
Yeah.
or contractors. Internally, is it remote? Can you walk
Yeah.
us through how the team structure looks?
Yeah, for sure. So we founded in the peak of Australia's lockdowns, right when we've got everything from uh, I think at the point in time we had like 2 weeks after the business started to form, and then all of a sudden, all of Sydney was locked down. So yeah, and so we got really good early on around working remotely, and our entire team are all remote. We've had points in time where we've set up offices, but they were just incredibly underutilized. So we are all split out. We've got everyone from here in Sydney. We get a good presence. Some people in Melbourne. I got one guy who lives in Kalgoorlie, which is in the middle of the desert in Western Australia. Yeah. And that's right, you're from Perth, that's right. Yeah. And everything in between there. We've got some team over in Europe. I've got an offshore team in India. They're fantastic. I guess a couple of things in that team makeup that's important. I mean, the majority of them are engineers like myself, sales, a bit of operations in between there. But a couple of things. We have a no clock watching policy. We don't have a 9 to 5. And that's it's an element of trust, which is really important, especially when you're in an early business. Also, I think it's a really outdated ideology that we would have you come to work at this time, you finish at this time. I've got team members who work their absolute best when they start and finish later, and others who work the exact opposite. And we embrace that as much as we can within reason. Right tools, everyone has proper, we use Slack, Notion for documentation, and you name it, Google Meets for meetings. Set those all up. Everyone can work asynchronously from wherever they are in the world, and you are in a really good position from day dot.
As far as who reports to you, what does that structure look like? Because I don't
Yeah.
think any one person can kind of manage 50 people.
Yeah.
There's, depending on what book you read, it's you should manage 5 or 6 or 7, and they should manage 10, and etc. So what's the foundation look like there?
Yeah. Right now I'm a bit overloaded, but the general thesis behind it is that, particularly with engineering, which makes up the majority of our team, we have domains of expertise. By domains, I'm not referring to like a back end team or a front end team. I actually really hate those terminologies. I think they're really limiting, tend to pigeonhole people. But I have teams that focus on business areas. The biggest thing that we do is lots of cars come into our platform and lots of activity goes out of it. So we have a whole team that's dedicated to inventory or integrations that are related to that. And they build these awesome systems that know everything about that. And they know that whole data model. Then we've got another team that is all around things to do with user generated content. They build the click and drag and drop editors and so on. Out of that, continuing to scale in this squad style fashion, but then you've got to find a way for these teams to be able to communicate to each other. There needs to be a ubiquitous language that they each share, but they can still operate in their own domains at their own pace. And I think the correct term for this is matrix management, but essentially having a layer that can go in between those different teams and work with them on their more horizontal areas. For example, having someone who can go off and help with the integrations between the inventory team and how that ends up on the user generated content team, allowing them to be able to work in a really streamlined fashion. But ownership is key. You got to have someone who can go off and own that part of the inventory space. You got to have someone who owns that other domain and XYZ. When you don't have that, and this is an area that is really easy to fall into as a founder, is that you can end up being that owner for everything. That's a really easy mistake to make. Because in the early days, you can do that. You can be the founder for everything, and you'll probably nail it. And that's fine. But then you get a couple of customers under your belt. And you got to manage support inquiries while scaling the business and raising funds and dealing with someone who just quit. And you suddenly can't do all of that. So things start to fall away. We've probably got I'd say 2 or 3 of these in our business that are still there, that are just these areas that we've gone, okay, we raced ahead, we built that, but now we don't have the capacity to deal with it. It's not high enough priority. So we let it sit there and it's dormant. And we have to come back to it one day. All right. And there are other areas which are really high priority. And we've got teams that focus on those and we rally around them. But those 2 or 3 things that are dormant, I'm one of the few people who knows how they work. And that's a really bad place, because if I got an issue, I still got to go and deal with that. I think if I were to go back and fix one of my early mistakes, it would have been identifying those domain areas really early on and starting to build people out around those and allow them to have ownership earlier.
Yeah, the growing pains of hiring and firing and building out these systems and everything, I think is something every founder will for sure go through. What about, let's say I'm a new founder, what would you say, and I guess it depends on the type of company, would potentially be my most important hire, or who should I be looking to hire first? Is it an operations manager? Is it a doer? Is it a finance person? Let's say I'm under $1 million ARR, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, I think it actually comes down to you, yourself. You want to find the area that you're not going to nail it yourself. Okay. You're underneath $1 million ARR. I can go into a sales meeting. I can do okay with it. I'm told I'm actually pretty good. But frankly, I hate it. I loathe it. It's terrible. It's not me at all. All right. And really fortunate that one of the first early hires that I took on was someone who would take on that role. Maybe if I just step that back a little bit, and if I take the hiring aspect out of it for a second, there's a really common thing that happens, especially when you're even a bit earlier than $1 million ARR and you may be at, let's just say you're at maybe pre-revenue or you're about to get revenue. Okay. There's this thing that happens. All right. You put your LinkedIn post up and you're now a business. Congrats. Well done. Then you're going to get about 100 people wanting to be an advisor. Don't take an advisor on until you really understand what you want that person to do. If you cannot define that really, really, really clearly, you do not need them. You do not need to throw equity at them. I have great advisors on my board. I got really lucky, but I'll tell you now, the sheer number of people who came through that just wanted a slice of equity and had nothing to offer to the business. And we did have a couple that we actually had to get rid of because they didn't care about the business. They didn't care about the mission, care about the vision at all. It was just about, that's just what they do. You go back and look at these people, they're everywhere. So figure out what you really need. Figure out what your gaps, your weaknesses are. Hire or find someone to roll into that place. And if I go back to what I said before as well, as much as it might pain you or you might not be very good at it, if it's possible, you should still try and do that role first. You should still try and do that sales role first. Even if it's an engineering role that you need because you need an engineer to be able to build the thing, but you can't code, try to build a prototype with no code first. Understand that that person's maybe going to need a designer to be able to help them. Okay, you're going to figure that out pretty quickly. But you're going to understand that that person needs to be able to talk to a client because this whole thing's going to revolve around what the client needs. So if you hire someone who can't do that, then you're screwed. Or you're going to have to hire 2 people, in which case your headcount doubles. Go in and do the thing and learn it yourself.
Yeah, get your hands dirty.
100%. Get your hands dirty. Just get in there. That's fun as well. You get so much out of that. More than just finding the right person, you also find what the strengths and weaknesses of your business are because of that. There's a ton of opportunity.
Yeah, and then you'd be able to answer these really difficult questions that people have when they come into the role. If you don't know them, then perhaps maybe don't hire for them until you have the answers to their question. Really also, quick though, with you go.
No, just it gives that person coming into it as well a much better foundation to work with. They're not just coming in and floundering. They get to know from you what you need, and it works out really well. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in today's world anyway, aren't we all coders? I mean, AI pretty much does everything for you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's an awesome world that we live in, right?
Yeah, it's great. Did you get a chance to see Google AI's new presentation of their updates that just came out? Insane.
I haven't seen that one. I was reading on the weekend the OpenAI codecs, that seems amazing. But
Yeah, it's old news. That's 3 days
is it?
ago. That's old news in AI.
We gotta update.
Yeah, no, man, it's crazy what it's doing. Like just text to creation, just or thought to creation, and then how it understands the context of what you're trying to do, and then codes it really well, and then live previews, AI videos. I could not tell the difference, to be
Unreal.
honest, what's real or not anymore with humans as well. Actually, this is super relevant. There was a AI video of journalists at a car show talking about new car releases, and it looked incredible. It looked like damn. G'day, I'm Paul. What's his YouTube channel?
Oh,
In Australia,
geez.
car expert.
Hi, gosh, you got me stumped right now.
I think it's you know the guy though, right? Like,
yeah.
we'll Google it afterwards. Anyways, it looked like he was at a car show basically, which he recently was in China and stuff. And you couldn't tell, but the only giveaway is when someone was wearing a vest and it had the writing on there, and it was like
the AI
less
writing.
Anglies or something. They can't really do text yet.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it when you get the little mix-ups in there and like the car bonnet is just actually flipped upside down, but that's all good. It's just part of it.
It's a new resto mod. Hey, we're almost halfway through the year. I'd be curious to see how you're tracking towards your goals for this year, and what are some of the things that you're working on for the rest of 25 and beyond. What does that look like for Vyro in the next sort of 2 to 5 years? Do you forecast out that far?
Yeah, and we do. So it's been an awesome year. I mean, we're coming in, it feels like, I swear January was yesterday, but we went into this year, we had a couple of good key targets, primarily around revenue, but also around some very strategic clients that we wanted to land. I'm really excited to share that we just landed one of those clients, a manufacturer in Europe. Can't say the name yet, but 8 countries will have our software running on them by around July, August this year, all part of that deal, which is fantastic validation for us, our team, to be able to go through that journey, to just keep stepping up in the world in terms of the types of clients that we can work with. We've scaled everything from a mom and dad dealership who are doing it tough, trying to just make a buck, living inside of a big growing world, everyone up to major enterprises with tens of millions of customers and dealing with all of the compliance challenges and headaches that come with that. Every single one of these deals comes with its own particular opportunity. This is one of the most language diverse deals we've done. It's in more countries than languages I know how to speak, which isn't hard. I don't know how to speak many languages, but it's an exciting turn of events for us. Revenue wise, I think this has been a really interesting world. We've seen our revenue is in a really good position, but we've seen the market and the industry just flipped on its head. I mean, before Trump did all of these things with tariffs, there was a ton of tariffs happening in Europe as well on Chinese cars, and that took the market into a massive spin, especially given that so many of the tariffs were being applied on car manufacturers, which were headquartered in Europe and meant to be protected by this, but they manufactured parts of their cars over in China. So we've seen this constant turmoil, and we're not unique here. The whole world is seeing this. It's a historical time. 25, if I go back and look, 2025, 2024, 2023, we've seen everything in this time from major natural disasters, COVID-19 pandemics, Silicon Valley Bank shutting its doors. We closed a fundraising round on that weekend that happened. We're a resilient team. We've been through some really rough times. We keep getting better. And in that face of adversity, we actually do our best. So maybe this is me being a little bit wanting it to be crazy, but just bring it on, because 2020 nothing.
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah, famous last words.
Yeah, but your track record of turning it around, I'd kind of have the cojones, however you say it, to back you.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Will, let's do a little segment that I like to call the lightning round, where I just fire off 5 questions and you try and answer them as rapidly as you can. Starting with the first one, What's one thing every SaaS founder should stop doing?
Stop trying to start your business as purely just some LinkedIn world. You don't try to build a startup, build a business. Okay. That's the whole thing. Just stop with this whole thing of talking about it, making it look like this massive thing, building a business that has absolutely no background behind it from a financial position. Just build a business, get product in and sell it, and grow your revenue and stand on your own 2 feet.
What is the most underrated growth channel, do you think?
I'm going to say, you're talking in terms of LinkedIn, Facebook, no?
Yeah, like paid ads, organic, UGC, word of mouth. What's
All right.
what are people underrating right now?
We actually have one. We've been finding this is really, really successful, and for our clients, who we want them to be able to absolutely smash it. Facebook Meta ads, but specifically for vehicles, we've found a way to be able to automate the whole thing where all of their cars end up straight up on Facebook. They pay for the ads as well, of course. That works an absolute charm, and I think it's really, really good. So we love that. It's great.
Nice. What's a hard decision you should have made sooner?
Yeah, but definitely winding down the first form of our business, or just finding some exit. I think if I pulled that earlier, I could have sent it off onto something awesome and kept a ton more cash in the business to be able to go off and accelerate even faster.
Hey, Will, before we wrap up the show, just wanted to ask, kind of ask every founder, but if you were to mentor a first-time SaaS founder or founder of anything, what is some general advice or one key piece of advice that you would like to give them?
Yeah, you're going to go through highs, lows. You're going to find all of these different points when you're going to need to have a ton of clarity and be able to understand really where you stand in order to navigate the next steps. And when it's crazy and you've got customers calling you and you've got 100 Slack messages, and I'm not even kidding, you've got emails that you haven't gone back to for 3-4 days, and you've got a family as well, and whatever else in your life, it can be a lot. You need to very quickly figure out what you need to do in order to put yourself in a position where you feel grounded and you feel confident in your business. This is going to be 100% you. It's an exploration that you need to figure out. For me, weirdly enough, as someone who is terrible with numbers, struggles sometimes with simple arithmetic, and that might seem strange for an engineer, but I am. And for me, it's I go back to my budget and I get really solid about where I stand, and that's it. That's just me. Doesn't have to be you. Don't just do what I do, but you should really figure that out and own it early on, and use it when the time is right. And you'll know when the time is right, 100%. If I think back to the point in our journey when we were having an awesome client and we were going great, we were about to land this fantastic deal, all fell apart, suddenly no cash in the business, practically insolvent. That was a real down time for the business. But I knew how to get myself back into that point where I knew clarity. I knew how to understand where the business stood. I could navigate that journey, and we turned a profit, like I said, $500,000 months after. If you don't do that, you'll go crazy.
Well, if you don't do that, you'll go crazy. That's the way to end it right there. Will, this has been an awesome conversation. I want to thank you very much again for joining us. Where can people connect with you or learn more about Vyro?
Yeah, for sure. So Vyro.co, Vyro.co. That's us. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm generally pretty responsive as well. Yeah, especially if you're a founder starting out somewhere, I'd love to hear your story and see what I can do to help.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Will, thanks again for joining us. If you liked it, share it with a founder that you know, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks again, Will.
Thanks, Russell.